Yes, so this is Engineer Nakitete Anowi. I'm the Vice President for Wine. So I'm stepping in for the President who is not available today. So I think this whole discussion stems from recognizing the need to address gender imbalance in engineering leadership. And despite that we've made progress, women are still underrepresented in engineering roles, particularly in leadership positions. So this discussion would help boost morale for people, for ladies, female representation, not only as a matter of equity, but also essential for fostering innovations and diverse perspective in the industry. So there are quite a number of strategies that can be used to enhance women taking up leadership roles in engineering, mentorship, inclusivity, recruitment practice, and so many other things. So this evening, I know Engineer Yao Kujetu personally, and I know her experiences would help and enrich us and give us motivation to strive to take up leadership roles in our various organizations as women. So this is what I have for all of us. Let's enjoy the session with her, and I know we'll go home with a lot of insights and a lot of strategies to be able to take up roles up the ladder. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Vice President. Yes, also on the part of Branch 4, I would like to share some few words. The program that we are having this evening in collaboration with WINE is what we call My Experience. And like you all know, all of us on the call now join the institution on different days, different years, or at different locations. So at a point in time, realize that some people may have experience than others. And it's most important than when you already have people who have experienced what you are about to go through and they share it with you. It actually makes you know exactly what is lying ahead of you. So Branch 4 have been organizing these sections for some time now, and this time around we decided to collaborate with WINE to actually have this program. Let me just give a brief background of the facilitator this evening for the benefit of those who don't know her personally. I know her personally, so I know all the credentials. The person going to give us the lessons today is a professional engineer. Actually, she's a fellow of GHIE. She's the director and principal engineer at Build Consult. Her interests are in green and sustainable engineering in the area of residential, commercial, and the industrial sector. In her current portfolio for GHI, she's the National Counselor and currently the chairperson for the Conference and Programs Committee. In the past, she served on the Education and Training Committee, the Professional Practice and Ethics Committee. Her qualification, please, if you are not talking, can you mute your microphone for us so that we don't get feedback from your end? Okay, let me continue. The person who is going to give us the lesson today has qualification in mathematics as well as electrical engineering, all obtained from United States. Because she cares about the environment, one of the things that she normally does during her leisure hours is to ride her motorcycle. And I think it's something that we all have to emulate. Without wasting much time, even though we cannot hear your hands clapping, you can raise it so that we see. With a round of applause, shall we invite Engineer Ya Obiniwa Okujetu onto the podium to give us the experience for today. So I want to see your hand in the reaction so that we know that you are clapping.
Thank
Engineer
you.
Ya Okujetu, please, are you on the call? Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Yes, I am, Engineer Say. Thank you very much for that sweet introduction. I'm very excited to be here. Where those of us in Accra, I guess we're all part of Branch 4. So I am a member of Branch 4. I'm also a proud member of WINE and also one of the council members for WINE as well. So I'm so excited about this collaboration. When I was invited to speak on this subject, and I hope you can all hear me, and I hope the sound is quite clear.
Yes, it's loud and clear.
It's loud
Awesome.
and clear.
Okay, so when I was asked to speak on this subject, I was quite taken aback because I know there are so many female leaders who have gone ahead of me, a lot of whose shoulders I have stood on to rise to where I am and where I'm still headed. So I was quite taken aback that of all the people ahead of me, they still came to me to share my experience. But all the same, one of the things I've learned as a female engineer is that we don't need to sell ourselves short. As much as possible, whenever we're given the opportunity, we must put our best foot forward. So I will jump right into my presentation. I will keep my camera on till we get into the nitty-gritties, and then I'll turn my camera off. So I will quickly share my screen. Just give me a moment. And then we will take it from there. Okay. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can
Yes.
see your screen.
Awesome. So again, for the benefit of those who may not have interacted with me in the past, my name is Engineer Ya Obenewa Okujeto. I've recently been elevated to the class of fellow, which I'm quite excited about because it comes with responsibilities. I also am I am one of the 3 national counselors for this tenure, and I'm chairing currently the programs and conference committee of Ghana Institution of Engineering. Anytime I'm given the chance to present, I like to put my picture there because sometimes we need to just show our faces so people get used to it, because we're women, we're proud of ourselves, and we don't need to shun away from being who we are. So before we jump into the nitty-gritty of things, I'll share the roadmap to today's conversation. It's quite simple. The key thing in this conversation is to look at strategies to enhance female leadership in engineering. And this is going to be basically based on my experience so far. I have a long way to go. I've only gotten so far in my career, and I hope the experiences from this last almost 2 decades would help us all make some informative decisions. But before I get into the roadmap, I just wanted to make a few disclaimers and a few housekeeping. I think Engineer Say did mention, if it's possible, let's stay muted so that we have few distractions. At any point in time, if you should see my screen off, just remember that ECG has taken my power. I do not have an automatic transfer switch, so it might take me a few minutes to come back on. However, I'm hoping that that does not happen on this call. The roadmap is quite simple. I'll start today by giving you an overview of my journey as an engineer, and my journey into leadership as well. And then we'll look at the importance of inclusive leadership from my perspective and my experience, the import of honing your craft and owning who you are, professional development, and we'll look at it from 2 different perspectives, the effect of a supportive work environment in growing female leaders, the role of mentors and sponsors. This one I'm quite excited about. The import of equitable recruitment and promotion practices, work-life balance support, and this is very important for a lot of us women because this is where sometimes we fall short. And then finally, we will look at an overall cultural shift in making sure this happens. A brief overview of who I am. And I'll tell you a little about my birth story. And why is this important? Because I feel sometimes when we tell our stories from a very technical point of view, we lose sight of the fact that we came from somewhere. I was born in Accra. I was born to an engineer and an artist. I am one of 3 children, the last, and I think the best of the 3. I know my sister is on here, she'll disagree, but I think I am the best of the 3. And I think right from childhood, I was quite an independent child, if you ask me. I was born with what they call Erb's palsy. So I have a deformity on my right side. For most people who do not know me personally, it's difficult to see it. But sometimes when you look very hard, you can tell that I have a bit of a shift on my right side. So I was born with Erb's palsy, but my parents never used that as a tool to prevent me from doing anything. My formative years were in Tema. I went to Tema Parents Association School. I then progressed to Wesley Girls High School, where I opted for science. To me, science was an option because apparently I scored high enough to get into the science program of Wesley Girls High School. But at that age, I was never passionate about anything in particular. I had so many interests right from childhood. I did everything under the sun. And so if you speak to me and you ask whether I was one of those people who had a passion for something, I was never that child because I had so many interest areas. And even at that age, I wasn't sure whether I was going to become an engineer. Leadership roles before my career. Right in primary school, I was part of organizations such as LifeLink. I recently shared this story with a group of my female friends that a lot of the things I did in primary school was actually pushing me towards international relations, politics, or law. I volunteered a lot of my time to the United Nations doing what we call children's rights advocacy. And so I spent a lot of my formative years traveling all over, fighting for the rights of the child and speaking all kinds of grammar to make sure that children were included in decision-making. So up until the age of 14, I had probably traveled about 10 countries, sat with world leaders, asked for children to have a voice in decision-making processes. And so for most people who knew me at that age, I was meant to be a UN Secretary General, a lawyer, or something other than an engineer. But these were all sorts of leadership roles that I took as a child. When I went to Wesley Girls, I also took on a few other leadership roles, and that also helped in morphing and shaping who I was as a person. If you speak to my parents or if you speak to anyone who knows me quite well, they would let you know right from the beginning that I know who I am. And I may not have known what I wanted from the get-go, but I was quite a confident child. I was quite an assertive child, but I was still a very respectful child, in my opinion. However, I was quite sure of who I was, and therefore I was not playing to the gallery, and I was not trying to be something other than who I was. And that was very important for me as a child growing up. This also helped in making sure that whatever decision I took for society was based on belief systems that I had. So I started fighting for all kinds of things as a child. And then also as a young adult, I was still doing a lot of advocacy projects for society. One of the things that I learned early is that I'm a lazy reader. I'm not sure why I can't stick to reading a book and completing it. I cannot boast of one storybook that I've ever completed. And this is no lie, because I read and my brain fades away and I go somewhere else. However, if you gave me a set of mathematic problems to solve, I will spend endless nights making sure that I have dotted every I have deviated every formula, and I had made sure that I'd gotten the answer to the project. So for me, anything that involved reading was an off-putter for me. I was lucky to have a father who was an engineer, and also lucky to have been his handbag as a little child. So I got to see what it was like being an engineer. I wouldn't say that it really was a direct influence on the decision-making that I had to become an engineer. But it also made it easy for me to think about it because I had seen engineering being practiced firsthand. When it was time for me to head to university, the decision had to be made on what I wanted to study. I brought a set of schools and presented it to my parents as to what I wanted to study. And for me, it was an option of doing what we call a dual degree in engineering program. What the dual degree in engineering does is that you can do a course in some other program and then still go ahead and do an engineering career. I made the wrong decision by choosing a school that actually did say they were offering international relations and engineering as an option. However, when I attended Spelman College in Atlanta, I realized it was going to be almost impossible to achieve my goal of being an international relations person and still work as or study to become an engineer. So I did a bit of, I wet my feet in the international relations department for a bit, but it wasn't possible for me to merge the idea of being an engineer and also doing international relations. So the options were then to look at chemistry, mathematics, and all the other science programs. So I started off as a computer science major. Unfortunately, being a computer science major was not an option for me because I couldn't sit at one place and program. I'm a very feisty young little girl, so I like to be able to get up and stretch, and programming was not an option for me. So that was out of the table. And then I looked at the option of chemistry. Chemistry I was very good at. I guess it's the chew, pour, pass, and forget from my formative years that helped. And so I was being encouraged to pursue chemistry. My first semester, actually, no, my sophomore year in college, I had the opportunity to intern with Kodak, Eastman Kodak. And I'm sure for those of us who are not Gen Z, we remember Kodak from being the camera company from back in the day. I was asked to be in their lab as a lab rat. And I spent that whole summer, 3 months in the lab, working on organometallic chemical decomposition, vapor, something that I now don't remember. But sitting in a lab for so long reminded me of why I knew I wasn't going to be able to be a lab person. So all this while, 2 years had passed in college and I had to make a decision on what I wanted to do. I had taken enough mathematics courses to allow me to then pursue mathematics as a major. So with that third year approaching, I opted and I declared mathematics as my major. So my first degree from Spelman is in mathematics. From there, I continued on to Columbia University in New York for the remaining 2 years of the dual degree in engineering program and have a degree in electrical engineering. I'll be honest with you, I was one of 3 girls in a department of 25 students, and it was the most heartbreaking time of my life. There were times when I felt like giving up. I would call home and say I would no longer stay in school, but giving up and quitting was not an option because I knew the kind of investment that had gone into my education. Looking back now, I think it was one of the things that shaped me and has helped me become who I am because I learned failure firsthand. I also learned how to pick up from when you failed and make something good out of it. So it was a very good turning point for me as well. Right from college, I was privileged to have been, I actually applied to work with a company in New York called WSP. At the time, it was Flack & Kurtz WSP. I was then recruited as a design engineering technician and then became a design engineer. I worked with WSP in New York in 2000. I got the appointment in 2006, right out of college. And when I was accepted to WSP, I was in a team of 5 women. It was a project for a hotel in Las Vegas, now known as the Aria, but it was being run by MGM City Center. And I was one of the very few young engineers who got the chance to work on that project. So in my team, we were actually headed by a female senior engineer, electrical engineer, and the remaining engineers that worked on the project were 4 female engineers as well, myself being the junior engineer on that team. And it was quite an interesting time in my life. I had gotten out of college with just a very theoretical perspective of engineering. And this is a case where you had to then show yourself strong and practice what you had learned. The firm I worked with was a consulting firm. It was an MEP consulting firm at the time. At the time, they had not migrated into the big company that they are now. And when I went in, there was a young engineering gentleman. Well, he was a student who was interning, but he was very good in AutoCAD. And so whenever I closed from work, my normal hours closed, I would stay in and sit with him just to learn the rudiments of AutoCAD, because in engineering school, we were not taught AutoCAD, because you are not being prepared for just the consulting world. You're being prepared for diverse electrical engineering fields. So I spent that time staying behind, sitting with this young man and learning AutoCAD from scratch. Today, one of my joys is actually doing anything CAD related. I tell the people in my office, that if left to me alone, I would just be a CAD technician, because I truly enjoy designing in CAD or in Revit or in whatever model that we do. So that's where I picked the passion from learning from other people. Right after college, whilst I was working with WSP, my father, who also ran an MEP firm in Accra, had come to New York, where I was working at the time. And he had come with a prospective client of his who was building a hotel in Accra. And they were there to purchase he was building the hotel at the time was going to have it was going to be a rotating restaurant at the top of the hotel. So they had come into New York so they could go and purchase that equipment. I was driving at the time, so I opted to take my dad to the factory that was manufacturing the rotation table for the restaurant. It was on this long drive and this conversation with my dad that I decided that maybe America was not for me and that I would move back to Ghana, because we had a conversation about the prospects. And remember, this is 2006, where right after that, there were a lot of boom in the economic struggle in Ghana, where people were moving back to find their feet in Accra. So on this conversation, I got to hear about projects that were happening in Ghana, the prospect of engineering in Ghana, and the opportunities that were made available. One thing that my father made clear to me was that he wasn't going to force me to move. He wasn't going to force me to stay either. However, I should realize that in whatever decision that I make, I would have to bear in mind that things will not just be there on a silver platter. Things are going to be very different. He spoke to me about his company and the fact that his company was a limited liability company with partners, and that if I'm coming, I shouldn't come with the intention that I was coming to work for my father, but I was coming to work for a company. At that point, I said to him, how much was he willing to offer? And he said they would get back to me on that. But I was being paid quite well with WSP. But the decision-making point for me in moving back to Ghana was simply the fact that if I had stayed in America, I was going to be staying behind to learn the codes of New York, the codes of Las Vegas, the codes of all the other states that I was working in. And any other time that I was ready to move back to Ghana, I would then have to come and learn about the codes, the British standards, and then the Ghanaian wiring codes and all that. To me, the earlier, the better. Home was always an option for me. I was a young girl who was not married. I didn't want a case of being trapped in the system. So immediately I made a decision that I would move back to Ghana. And that decision was formalized with the option of coming to work at the time with my father's company, which was Multi-Group Consultants. So I was offered a salary, a very, very meager salary. I took on that salary and moved to Accra the next year. It is where I believe the opportunities have been endless for me. I have found myself and I've found my passion to grow as a female engineer and also as a leader in the engineering field as well. I still have imposter syndromes. I still sometimes feel that I'm not yet a leader, even though I have so many things I have achieved in this short time in my career. There are so many projects that I can boast of in Accra. There are so many projects outside of Ghana that I've worked on. However, I still do not think I'm yet a leader. I have the leading capabilities, but I also feel there's so much more that I need to learn, unpack, and then teach. So I think the next slide would help us to figure out where we all stand in all this. So this is an overview, and I think it's I actually didn't think I was going to spend so much time talking about myself. I've learned to speak about myself without fear. I've learned to speak about myself without feeling that I am bragging about myself, because at times as women, when we're given the opportunities to talk, we try to minimize ourselves. We try to make ourselves small and not speak to the topics or speak about ourselves. But sometimes people need to hear from us. People need to learn from us, and people need to also know what they're capable of achieving as well. So I'm sorry if I've spent so much time on this bit, but this is my journey, and I thought it would be good to share as an overview. So the importance of inclusive leadership. And I think this is key to our conversation. Oh, before I go there was a topic that I had, there was a conversation I had from the previous slide. And that question, I think if you can go into the chat column, the first question was, are true leaders born or made? What's our opinion on that? Because sometimes this conversation has diverse views. Some people say true leaders are born. Others say true leaders are made. By the end of this presentation, I want to see where we all stand on this particular question and what our views are. So are true leaders born or are true leaders made? Okay, so the importance of inclusive leadership. One of the things I've heard discussed whenever we talk about inclusive leadership or inclusivity is, why is it so important? If people are there, irrespective of the gender, doing the work, why is it so important that we need to have women in leadership? If there are men already doing the work and doing what they are supposed to do by merit, and they haven't found another person, be it a woman or a man, why are we so pressed on ensuring that other women or women generally are involved in the leadership process, and why is it so important? And these are all my views. It's not reflective of what you may also believe, but I think these are very important things that we must consider when we're talking about inclusive leadership. We have a social responsibility, and there's a need for us to understand why it's important that women are included. The gender inclusivity in leadership reflects who we are as people and what we intend to achieve in terms of social justice. So leadership at all levels is key, and having women in those leadership positions is very important. It also shows that we have a good corporate governance structure. If you're a company that's working and all your top leaders are men, meanwhile, you have the growth potential of women in the firm, but they are not rising. It only goes to show that there is a challenge and that your governance structure needs to be looked at. So it's important from an ethical point of view and a social responsibility point of view to also consider inclusivity. Women coming into the fold enhances the decision-making process. A diverse team comes with different perspective, more comprehensive and innovative solutions to issues. And why do we need to sideline the views of other people who also have several experiences that may be different from another group? And that's why it's important to have the gender diverse teams and share each and everyone's experience in the process. One of the projects I recently worked on, and which I remember, I said this at, I think Gridco had a conference and we spoke about it. I was an electrical engineer on a project for a very small multinational fit out. And in one of the rooms, they had a room for women who had just come from, childcare rooms for women who had kids. So this company was being very proactive in creating rooms for nursing mothers. And in that room that they created, the architects designed a really beautiful room with a chair, with a lamp, and all kinds of facility available to them. And by the time we were commissioning that room, I had been out of the country when all the design decisions were being taken. By the time we commissioned that room, we realized that there were certain elements that were missing in the room. It is not to say that it is only women who can identify that sort of decision, but a place to keep, for instance, your breast pump, a place to plug in the breast pump was totally omitted from this design. I, however, feel that if we had more people with diverse views and diverse experiences, some of these issues are caught quickly, and it enhances the richness of the conversation as well. So, sorry, my screen is, I need to move this. Sorry, just 1 second. I'm unable to. There we go. So it's just a matter of having more people involved in the decision-making process so that we have diverse views in that sense. And also innovation and creativity thrives in an inclusive environment where different perspectives are encouraged. And again, from the experience I just shared, it's important because understanding the different markets, the different customer issues are very important in ensuring that a broader audience are reached in terms of our delivery as well. Okay. Here I used the EC. I need to acknowledge that because I used the ECG board as my backdrop for this particular slide. So here's the case of female leadership in some of our private and public sector institutions. And I actually took just a few of those that I can relate with to share as an example. So I'm looking at VRA. I looked at VRA as a company. I looked at VRA as an entity, their engineering and operations team. I then looked at ECG. I looked at Gridco. I looked at AESL. Then I looked at a few, two consulting companies that I personally have relationships with. So I looked at ABP Consult's board, and then ABP Consult engineering team. And then I looked at associated consultants as well. VRA currently is running a board. Sorry, just 1 second. There we go. I needed to clear this from my screen so I can see the full screen. So VRA currently is running a board that is made up of 86% male and about 13.9% female. Their engineering and operations department is 90.9% male and 9% female. ECG has 75% male and 25% female on their board. Gridco has 78.57 male and 21.43% female representation. AESL has 83% male and 16.67% female. Now, ABP Consult, when we spoke, and we actually spoke about this, and I made them aware we were sharing this, are making strides to make sure that they move from what they currently have. The board for ABP Consult is currently 100% male. Their engineering is 93.3% male and 6.67% female. And then associated consultants who are doing phenomenally well and are growing their management team is at 60% male and 40% female. Now, in looking at these numbers, it's not really about the numbers. It's just a representation of the fact that if we're churning out so many women from our universities as engineers, if we're getting so many girls into STEM, if we're getting so many female to undertake training in all kinds of technical and vocational roles, why are we not able to keep and grow more females to then also be able to take on the leadership roles? Why are we seeing high ratios in academia? Why are we seeing more growth in that sector? Yet as we progress through the ranks, we realize that the numbers continue to decrease. So there certainly are issues as to why women do not stay in the field of engineering. And those who stay may not be progressing as fast as their male counterparts. And this is quite clear because clearly we understand that we are churning out more women in our tertiary institutions, and therefore there must be a gap between academia and industry. And not only that, but also in keeping women in industry and growing and taking them on to the next level of leadership as well. Before we address that issue of the gap, I want for the women who are on this call, for us to understand that all that we are talking about in terms of growth and leadership will actually start with us. So you need to, before you are even identified, before you are you grow in the field, there are certain things that we all need to consider, and not just the individual, but also the companies as well. We need to own our stuff. We need to get to a place where we are acknowledged for who we are, so that we are taken on a merit-based. So inclusive leadership is by merit and not merely a case of entitlement. Sometimes a lot of us say we just don't want to tick the boxes for the ESG goals that companies have now. We actually want to be known for people who are meritorious in that sense, and we actually know what we're about. So inclusive leadership, we must remember, is by merit and not merely a case of entitlement. It's important to gain the prerequisite knowledge needed to grow as an individual for you to be able to lead teams. So you need to know your stuff. I always say that one of my biggest fear is to be caught in a place where I don't know what I'm talking about. And so when I'm called to speak on certain issues that I have no clue about, I'm quick to say I cannot speak on the subject matter. However, if it's something that I can learn and speak about it, I'm more than willing to do that. So it's important to gain the prerequisite knowledge needed to grow as an individual and lead teams. And that takes us right into the heading of knowing your stuff. You need to have command and concise understanding of what is required as an engineer and as a leader. So you can't just be an engineer on paper. You must be an engineer in knowledge, you must be an engineer in practice, and you must be ethically inclined as well. You need to reduce as much as possible or eliminate that imposter syndrome. None of us have what it takes all the time. And our male counterparts know this more than anything. They raise their hands when they even don't know half of the things, but they are willing to put their best foot forward. So we need to stop holding ourselves back, and we need to be putting ourselves forward when we're being required to. So we need to reduce that imposter syndrome as much as possible. None of us truly have what it takes all the time. So this one is very important to me. I find that a lot of us are focused and are only looking at shattering glass ceilings or breaking records. We are not all going to be the first female engineer who XYZ'd. We're not all going to be the best engineer who did XYZ. However, we can all still be masters of our craft. So our goal should not be for the recognition. Our goal should not be for the acceptance. Our goal should actually be for impact and also to know our stuff. one of the things that I have learned in my experience, and I say this all the time, is when I'm called upon for mentoring programs and for, especially for young people, a lot of people want to be associated with brands, and they want to be associated with belonging to a certain type of women's organization. Otherwise, they're not speaking to that group of people. But the people who really need to hear from us are not people who already know this stuff. Half of the time, they're already established groups have prerequisite knowledge of what you're about to speak to them about. The underprivileged, those who do not get to see more women in leadership positions, those who do not get to hear about the growth prospects as an engineer, are the people that we need to reach out to more. So when I'm called to speak to the Girl Guides Association, these are the places where I get the tickle, because it's where I feel we can actually make an impact in improving STEM knowledge, etc. So we can't all just be the best or the senior most, or it's the glass ceiling shutters, but we can all still be masters of our craft and be good at what we do. Associate yourself with the right people who will speak for you in rooms whilst you're absent. And this, I think I'll speak a bit more about it when we get to mentors and sponsors. So professional development comes in two folds. As a person, you want to develop yourself, and then also as a company, you want your staff to grow, and that's the only way that your business would also develop. So from an individual perspective, you must always look at ways to improve your market value. I am not a big proponent, and again, I said from the beginning that my views may not necessarily reflect how everybody else feels, but I'm not a big proponent of building a personal brand, in quotes, because sometimes we get fixated about fixing ourselves in a box that it reduces our impact and our ability to be who we truly are. So I am a big proponent of ensuring that your market value, in as much as it's not aligned to a certain identity, must be of ethical and sound value, so that when we speak of you as an individual, it comes with a certain level of credibility. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a branded individual, but you must be an ethical engineer. You must be someone who is responsible, somebody who is impact-minded and willing to grow and to give back to society. I also think that the personal development is what will get you counted. So you need, as a person, to develop yourself, develop your craft, even whilst you're working in a company and expecting the company to be investing in your development. You as an individual also must give back. There's a saying of men and women saying, what does the woman bring to the table? It's the same thing with a company. And I'm speaking from a business perspective, that before I can invest in you, I want to know what you're also bringing to the table. So it's important that as an individual, you understand who you are, you build your value, and then it allows me to also see where I am going and how we grow together in the business. From the perspective of the business, access to leadership training, workshops, and CPDs is essential. A lot of us SMEs, the smaller companies, struggle with this because we fear to invest in our people, with the fear that once you've paid so much for their training and for their development, they will flee. But these are the opportunity costs that you make as a business, because in the interim, it could also build you something that even if they decide to leave in a year or two, you would have made your return on investment. So it's something that as a business, we all need to think about clearly and see how best we can invest in our people, provide them with adequate leadership training. And when I talk about the people, I'm talking about the female in our companies as well. And at this point, I'll speak about it because a lot of women who are in the childbirth period of their life realize that growth is stagnated in the corporate environment for them, especially when they've gone on to have children in succession. Companies are not so keen to probably invest in their well-being because they feel, oh, she'll be gone the next time again. But there are so many things that we can do to ensure that women like that who have something to offer are still given the opportunity to grow and are still able to deliver and be of good favor to the company as well. Okay, so supportive work environment, and this is going to be based on the fact that before anything is clearly noted, the company's governance structure must be clear. So a lot, and again, I speak to us, those of us who are smaller and medium enterprises are struggling with this. For us to be effective and to grow with women in our businesses, we need to have a proper governance structure, one that allows more women the opportunity to see where we are headed. So you need to define roles and responsibilities. You need to define roadmaps to development, professional growth, and succession planning. If I'm working in a company where I'm not too clear on where I'm headed next year or in the next 10 years, I may not be able to commit as much as I can. So as a female who is making plans for family and making plans for self, if I come to a business that does not even give me a clear and concise succession in growth markers, it becomes a challenge for me to actually grow. So for the businesses, it's important that you have these clearly indicated. All the financial benchmarks must be clear and concise based on merit. A lot of us do not know this, but sometimes in certain firms, our male counterparts are certainly making more than us for the same roles, for the same responsibilities, because we're not talking to each other. The numbers are not clear. So in a firm where you are all at a senior electrical engineering level, maybe the man or the male counterpart is making 1.5 times more than the female. Meanwhile, you're all delivering and providing the same level of work. It's important that as a business, the benchmarks are clear. The only reason I can accept why X is making more than I am is because it's clearly based on merit and it's understandable. A business that hasn't gotten any ethical standards and integrity would also not foster growth for a lot of female leaders. We are all, especially as female engineers, we are all strict thinkers. We look at ethics as a very, very important aspect of our growth. And so when you come to a company where you're not seeing it, it becomes a bit of a challenge for you. There needs to be transparency and disclosure. There needs to be stakeholder engagement so that women in the companies do not feel sidelined. And performance evaluation must be very gender neutral, and it must be based on less gender sensitive evaluations. And I guess we'll talk about that when we move along. And then also we should ensure that we're incorporating all the laws and regulations that are compliant in the company as well. All of the above will then form the company culture for which any person, male or female, will then feel the need to belong and also be a part of. So we need to be very clear on the above roles in order to create a conducive environment for women, female leaders as well. Okay. The role of mentors and sponsors. Sorry, let me mute this person. I don't know. Can you please mute yourself? I'm struggling to, oh, there we go. Okay. So the role of mentors and sponsors. For me, this is one area that has been quite, it's been a huge part of my leadership roles. A lot of the times, people who have identified my strengths, have identified what I can put or bring to the table, will speak for me in my absence, will speak to me about opportunities, and will nominate me for things that they feel would allow me to grow as a person. A lot of the times it's either a male or a female. It's neither one or. So I've had the opportunities where I've had male mentors and male sponsors, and I've also had the opportunities of female mentors and female sponsors. When I was when I was nominated to serve on the entity tender committee for Cocoa Marketing Company, for instance, it was at the time when Engineer Carlien was the president of Ghana Institution of Engineering. I don't know, even to this date, how she found out about who I was and where the conversation started. But she actually did nominate me on my blind side, spoke for me in my absence, and pushed me to take on that role. I've had so many other people also speak for me and position me in places where I didn't know they had actually spoken for. It's important, therefore, especially for us as female leaders, that once we are given the opportunity to bring other people along, we do that for inclusivity purposes and also for the varied perspectives that we also bring to society as well. So I am one of those people that, as much as I can, whenever there's opportunity for me to bring other people along, I identify other people in my circle who can deliver, who have the ability, and push them to that place. Now, there are so many other formal programs that helps with mentoring, especially for the younger engineers who are coming up. And you can decide to be part of these formal programs. At some point, maybe I'll share some information on that. And then you can also then look at informal ways of identifying people that you can consider as mentors, and also things that can also open up opportunities for you to be sponsored as well. The difference between mentors and sponsors, I think, are quite clear. And I think they're back in, the quote unquote, the boys club helped a lot of young men in their career growth. And some of us women have learned that it's important for us to also create that kind of environment for other women to also grow and nurture their own. As often as I could, I've been part of certain networking opportunities. So whenever I came to a place where I was asked to represent Ghana Institution of Engineering at some place, for instance, as much as I can, if it's in my capacity and capability, I will go ahead and be at those networking opportunities. And a lot of times, both my male counterparts and my female counterparts have come to me with such propositions. So whenever you're called upon to also be part of networking opportunities, consider it, because it could be opening doors for both yourself, your business, and your growth as well. Advocacy and promotion. It's very important that you advocate for those of us in leadership positions. We need to advocate and help with promotion practices as well. And again, I will not belabor this point, but visibility and recognition, you need to ensure that we're creating that level of visibility for ourselves. In all, you need that holistic support to ensure that you're growing in your career. I have been fortunate enough to have had a good support system from friends, family, and also from the formal sector to aid in my growth opportunities. But in all of this, the key thing is for us to think about the importance of having female leaders from a very from a societal change point of view, and put our cultural biases away for us to be able to understand why this is important. So there needs to be a cultural change. There needs to be a shift in the way we think about why inclusivity is important. Then we'll be able to see more female leaders rise in their roles. I'll be quick on this point: equitable recruitment and promotion practices. Ensuring promotion criteria are transparent and based on merit. I remember when I graduated from Columbia and I was working with WSP, I was sent back right in my first year to go and pick interns from Columbia. Now, one of the things, and I still have those CVs, I remember so well, one of the things I was asked to do was the moment someone handed me their CV to turn the CV down, ask them the questions that I wanted to ask them before I turned the CV over and reviewed the CV. The reason is that sometimes when you've had time to write about yourself, the embellishments may not be truly who you are. And so as much as possible, I may be biased by reading it and looking at certain things, but when I speak to the person and understand it, it takes away all those things. In the opposite of biased criteria or promotion criteria, what we tend to say is that as much as possible, give everyone the opportunity without knowing whether it's a male or a female. So establish clear and concise and transparent criteria for hiring and promotion. And this is well communicated so that when I'm coming to check the points for promotion, I'm not thinking about Amma or I'm not thinking about Kofi, but I'm thinking about what they have delivered, their KPIs, all the things that come into play as they have become an employee before I look at them in terms of promotion. And that goes to say, if it's possible, we should look at gender blind and anonymized recruitment as well. So we are taking out all the biases and ensuring that we are recruiting people just based on anonymity. We need to train people on bias. And I think it's one of the things that we don't have. There are people who still don't see it. They don't get the fact that certain thought processes or certain ideas about women is from a place of bias. And so we need to train people to understand why their views could be subjective and could be from a place of bias. And these are the people who are in the decision-making process before they are given the opportunity to actually help promote people in the firm. We need to monitor and track the impact of diversity and inclusion goals in companies. Sometimes we are just ticking boxes, again, especially now in the era of ESG. We are just quick to add numbers and take out numbers. But what is the impact and what is the true reflection of inclusivity and inclusion goals in our companies? And then finally, we need to make sure that when we are setting up committees for promotion, it's not biased. And so we need to ensure that the people who are taking decisions are from diverse backgrounds with all kinds of views and perspective so that it removes any biases and improves inclusivity as well. So for a lot of us, and I am included, the biggest challenge is work-life balance. I am a mother of a toddler, and one of the things that I have struggled with is sometimes wondering whether I am sacrificing too much of my life for my work or whether I'm sacrificing too much of my work for my life. And so we become very confused as to whether we are being selfish or whether we have actually truly given off our best selves in one aspect of our lives or the other. I am fortunate enough to create an environment that has helped me to kind of work and still keep my life quite balanced. And I'm appreciative of the fact that I may be speaking from a place of privilege because I have both my parents who are still alive, who are hands-on with my daughter. And so sometimes they come in to assist when things are not, I'm going haywire and I have to travel and I have to do this and I need assistance. So it's not everyone who may have that opportunity. So we need to create environments that help keep this work-life balance for people, women, especially for females to grow and take on leadership position. As an employer, I am also not blind to the fact that when you're growing a small company, especially, you want people who can stick around. You don't want people who are in and out and are not, there all the time, because there are times when you need to call on someone to take on a quick meeting or to go somewhere. And sometimes those of us, the women who are in the firms are the ones who are stuck behind because we don't have the support that we need. And so it's important that we create these support systems to have more women grow as engineers and then also as leaders. So one of the things that people are looking at these days are flexible work arrangements. With flexible work arrangement, however, especially in engineering, comes the issue of freelancing, conflicts of interest, and lack of proper structure in engineering jobs. So people say, well, if I let this person work from home, I can't monitor whether they are working on my project or they are working on a private job, and but there are structures in place and monitoring tools in place to ensure that if you've gotten someone to deliver, they deliver. The other thing is that we need to have strong systems that ensures that engineers, if they are working for a company, have a certain level of bond to that company. And it's included in how we sign off drawings, how our system allows for people to freelance. And that's one of the things that as institutions, we must clearly pay attention to. Freelancing is killing our industry, especially in the consulting field. And we must pay attention to things like that. So we understand the challenges there. However, it should not stop us from improving on flexible working arrangements so that women can grow. We need to incorporate tools that aids in workload management. For instance, companies that are still working with a certain outmoded type of software for design development, you're given unnecessary work to people when there are better tools in the system that can be used to minimize the workload on your staff. So we need to look at ways to incorporate better tools in our engineering practices. And then if we can look at supportive parental leave policies and on-site childcare to assist more women in our industries, that could also be helpful. Again, the cultural shifts and typical theories can never be taken away. A lot of us, when I would share my first experience when I went on a site visit when I moved back to Ghana, and I was sent by my boss to go for a site visit at the time. I was an engineer, so I sat at the table and the client walked in and he said, oh, is multi-group consultant here? And they said, yes, that's their rep. But why did they send the secretary? Where are the technical people, And I know we have moved, years on, we've moved away from that type of mindset, but there are still people with these kind of biases, and we need to work harder to shift the type of biases that we have. Discrimination and harassment policies in our diverse companies needs to be looked at and properly also worked on. Oops. So finally, I hope that I have belabored the points that I was asked to speak about. And I've also shared my own experiences in terms of growth, what I think we can all do to enhance more women in leadership positions. The idea of cultural shifts is important, and I cannot hammer on that enough. So we should not forget that the freedom of women is still quite recent. It's only since 1970 or so that women were given access to things that are as simple as credit cards. So we are still in a place where the mindset of people about women and the roles they can take in society needs to change. A lot of times people say that no one is stopping a woman from becoming a president. No, there are no barriers that have been put in place to stop a woman from lifting up their hand to become a leader. However, there are biases. However, there are things that are unequitable that makes it difficult for most women to rise into higher positions. There are financial obstacles. There are obstacles of work-life balance, which we've actually spoken about. And there are several things that makes it difficult, even if we raise our hands, for us to be a par and to have the equity that we need to rise at the same rate as our male counterparts. And those are the things that we're asking to be shifted a little so that women can also be given the same platform to progress. it's still in the mouths of some people that a woman is to be seen and not heard. And so a woman who may have a lot of views and perspectives is considered to be a rebel, or is someone who is just, too known in our local parlance. And so they prefer that you'd be not heard, but seen. And one of the things that is very important is that a lot of us women are burnt out. We're tired. We're constantly having to figure out and juggle our homes. We're trying to juggle out our work. We're trying to juggle out, I always say that you're a child to your parents, and then at some point your parents become your children. So now you have to baby your parents as well. So there are so many things that we do as women that burn us out. And so it's important that we find ways and means to balance this out in order for us to be able to take on the kind of leadership positions that we deserve. Meritocracy, we've spoken a lot about it, and we cannot hammer on that enough. Let's remember that as women, we're good problem solvers, and the world certainly needs us. So I've spoken a lot about myself, and I've spoken a lot about my trajectory into leadership, both in engineering as an individual. And before I start sounding like a robot, I wanted to just say that I am human. I have flaws. I am not perfect. I have not reached my destination as a leader in engineering. I have hopes of progressing to become bigger and better than I am doing with myself now. And so one of the things that I pride myself is keeping my life balanced. And in keeping my life balanced, I wear several hats. I am a mother, a very proud mother to a 3-year-old now. I am a friend. I ensure that my sister circles are strong. I make sure that I take time to spend time with my friends, because sometimes we lose sight of the impact of our social circles because we're engineers and we just want to do the technical stuff. But these are the things that keeps me balanced. I belong to social organizations outside of engineering that gives back to society, and it's very important to me. So I'm a Zonchen at heart as well. I am a daughter to a mother and a father who I love so dearly. I'm a biker, as most of you know. I own 2 Harley-Davidson motorcycles. I ride both in country and outside the country, and it's one of the things that I passionately enjoy. I belong to quite a big family, in my opinion. I have so many nephews and nieces I love so much. I do not lose sight of who I am. I know where I come from. I remember my childhood. I remember what sacrifices were made to put me where I am. So I never lose sight of who I am and where I come from. And therefore, my childhood is important to me. And finally, I'm an engineer who is looking to grow a company that is currently very small, but looking to grow in governance structure to be a company that revolves not around me, but around a system that would go on even in my absence. One of the things that I didn't mention is when I left WSP in New York, I thought that was the end of the road for myself and WSP. When I moved back to Ghana, years down the line, one of the companies that I currently partner with as equitable partners is WSP. So sometimes the kind of relationships that you keep would also help you progress in terms of your plans ahead. So if I had very bad blood with WSP when I left, it would be difficult for me to form this bond that I currently have with WSP. So in conclusion, I say that there's so many things that we need to do, both from a national perspective, from industry perspective, from institutional perspective, from individual perspective, to ensure that we're enhancing more inclusive culture and also ensuring that we have more female leaders in our corporate structure. I'm looking forward to the day when we're talking about numbers and in firms, we're no longer looking at single digits and the 15% and 20%, but we're looking at equitable numbers. And this is only going to be achievable if we have more structures in place, more deliberate efforts, more gap builders to bridge the gap between academia and industry. And on this note, and after 1 hour of speaking, I would like to conclude on my presentation. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and if there are any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Engineer Obiniwa Okujeto. I must say that it has been very inspiring. Thank you so much. There will be room for questions very soon. Please, we'll give you the opportunity. Those who want to ask questions, please use the button to raise your hand. We'll go according to those who have their hands. But before we get there, I want to acknowledge the presence of some national executives who, based on their busy schedules, still have the opportunity to come and share with us what the presenter was having for us. So I will first start with Engineer Na Lamkai Kwe, who is a national councillor and also the chairperson on the welfare committee. We'll give you the opportunity to say something as we go along. We also have on the call Engineer Philip Aheto, who is the executive rep for the technicians. We also have on the call Engineer Prof. Elsie Kaufman, also a national councillor and my committee chairperson. Engineer, I say hi. And then on the call also, we were privileged to have our national president, Engineer Kwabena Bimpong. So we're so blessed to have all these national executives on our call this evening. And I think that at this point in time, I'll give the chance for the national executives who want to say something first to say something, and then we can go to others who wants to ask questions from the presentation that we had this morning. So I want to give platform to the national executives. Engineer Na, are you there if you want to say something? You can go ahead.
Okay, hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Not much to say, but we are proud of Engineer Ya, and this presentation is a very great one, and I am sure that we have all benefited one way or the other. So congrats to Engineer Ya. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Engineer Prof. Engineer Prof, please, are you there? My chairperson. Engineer Prof, are you on the call? Okay, whilst we are waiting for her, Engineer Philip Aheto, please, if you have something to share with us, please go ahead.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you now, Prof.
All right, I was having technical challenges. I want to congratulate Engineer. Oh dear, I want to congratulate Engineer for this great presentation. Very inspiring indeed. Engineer Ya, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Engineer Prof. So I'll move to Engineer Philip Aheto. If you have something to say, please go ahead before we move to the questions and answers. Okay, whilst we are waiting, I was looking to see if I could find President still on the call. Okay, so we are moving straight to the question and answers. When he comes back, I'll give him the opportunity to say something to the entire team or the entire group this evening. On the questions, I can see Anthony Kojo Owusu. Please, when you raise your hand, I can only use the names that are showing here. So if you don't use your real name, the name I can see here is what I'll use. Engineer Anthony, are you there? I saw your hand up.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm
please
here.
Go ahead. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Good evening, family. Actually, yeah, this is a lovely presentation because you've gone outside and you've seen how things are done, and still you decide to come to Ghana to help your motherland. And I'm really grateful because when you travel outside the country, I know if in terms of when it comes to transportation, it's so unique, it's so beautiful. You can see in our transportation sector, you can see even trains moving, vehicles moving, traffic controlling, and we can do the same thing here in Ghana. So mine is to congratulate you and thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
done.
I'm trying to go through the chat to see if there's any question there. But if you have any question, please raise your hand so that we can see you and then we'll give you the opportunity to ask your question. Engineer Dr. Ophelia Ayamba, please go ahead.
Good evening to everyone out there.
Good evening.
Mine is a contribution to the discussions that we are having this evening. And I was at the mines, Golden Star Bokoso Prestige Limited, as a mine engineer. And in the process of working, I conceived, gave birth to a child that was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. So we call those children children with special needs, you know. So as a result, I was under so much stress managing the job and having to manage this particular kid. So I was referred to Konfanochi. I was referred to Konfanochi for a number of, to see a number of doctors there as far as the child is concerned. I will see, when I visit the hospital, I have to see the speech therapist. I have to see the nutritionist. I have to see a number of specialists concerning the child. And the fact of the issue is that I was not getting that necessary support at the working environment. No one to talk to at the mines, nobody to share my burden with. So I was so much overwhelmed with this child that I was having. So there was little I could do but to resign from the job. But my initial desire was to stay on the job, progress to the management level, and make impacts as far as my career is concerned. But having this particular child was so much stressful. A child with special needs, cerebral palsy, it wasn't easy. So finally, I had to resign. So when I resigned, I continued with my master's at KNUST. And then from there, I moved into academia. So as I'm speaking, I'm now in academia. And it wasn't my desire to be in academia, actually, but to be in the, the mining environment. But the challenges, the barriers were there. So as Madam was saying, if we could have on-site childcare system, this particular system can be of help to some of us. Meaning that with my situation, I could have taken my child to the environment and then leave the child with my mother or someone to manage. First, I'm within the working environment. And from time to time, I can easily move to the working environment there to monitor the child's progress. But here's the case, there is no such facilities within the working environment. So you have to leave the child at home, come to work in the morning, working out properly, and who to talk to was an issue. So just to add to what she has said as far as her presentation is concerned, to tell you that women are not progressing, not because we don't desire it, not because we don't want it. The barriers are so much, a lot of barriers out there in terms of support, psychological support, physical support, a number of them. The package is not available. So over to you, Madam. Just a contribution to add to the discussion for this evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Doc. And I think it's quite evident in your submission how passionate this particular topic is. But this is a clear indication of some of the things that does not allow a progressive or a succession system in one's stride. And again, you have mentioned it, that it's important that there should be some structure in place, some level of support system in place that allows a lot of us to be able to blend work and life in that sense. So I empathize with you and I acknowledge what you're saying. And I hope that your work in academia is also reflective of your skill and your passion for engineering as well. You never know what comes out of that as well. So I'm empathizing with you in that sense.
Thanks so much.
Engineer, thank you. So there's a question in the chat. Engineer, let me just read it for you so that you answer. Someone wants to know, please, are you married? And then want to say that, what advice will you give to married women who have to take care of their husband and babies and still working with male counterparts with still expected to give the same best results?
Yeah, you know, and I am married with a 3-year-old daughter, and I say that different environments have different implications to how we handle things. And I don't know if you remember when I said that I speak from a place where I acknowledge that I'm privileged to have a support system that allows me to maybe have extra hand with my child, for instance. For instance, I live on Spintex. My office is in Asylum Down, but my daughter is in school in Tema. And it's a deliberate structure that I have because my parents live in Tema. It gives them a chance to also bond with her. And it aids in how I go about my thing. It may have a bit of stress factor to it, but there's also pros and cons in that. Everyone must develop a system that works. In the interim, when we're trying to fight for equitable systems that support what we want. So I'd say that the challenges are glaring. From what you're saying, like, you know, you still have to give off yourself and be expected to give your best with your male as your male counterparts, but you need to find support systems that can aid in that. And usually that can come about if the companies are being supportive of you. Now, a small company that is also now trying to develop also will have a bit of a challenge because maybe you are the only woman in the company. Are they going to build another room for just this one person, or should they just hire a man instead? So these are things they will not speak about and may take action on in defense. I don't know how to put it. So I really think that we need to create environments that allows our male counterpart to understand why some of these opportunities are important so that women can thrive and grow as well.
Okay, thank you. We have President back on the line, so we'll give him the platform before we come to others who have their hands up. So, Engineer Kobna Bimpong, we want to hear your voice. We can see you on the call. Thank you for having you giving us some opportunity to have you on the call.
Well, thank you very much. I'm speaking all the way from Sierra Leone, Freetown, and I was on the call until I had a problem with my internet and I had to drop off. But then the first part of the presentation, as I listened and watched, has been very brilliant. And of course, I have known Ya for quite some time, and I know of the capabilities that women in general and her in specific brings to the table so far as engineering, leadership, and even work is concerned. And as she rightly showed, and maybe I should add that Associated Consultants has 50% of our management being females, or the top management being females. And here I'm talking about our vice presidents and associate vice presidents. We have 4 of them being females. And the points that she raised, and interestingly, just today I was talking to one of my female vice presidents, is the fact that women have a lot of capacity, but then there should be an intentional effort to bring out their capacities so far as leadership is concerned. I know there are some who may be a little bit withdrawn and would like to be in the background, but then when we give them as men the opportunity, and for the men who are sometimes scared and are sometimes taken aback and would want to say, oh, the women are taking over. No, they are not taking over. We have about probably over 50% of women in the country. And even where I am in Sierra Leone, they are about 50.5%. How can you leave out such a majority of human beings and brains for a developing country like ours, and for that matter, in Africa out of the equation. We have different perspectives. And I always use the elephant theory. I'm not stating the theory exactly, but then in terms of the way we view things, you might view it from the tail perspective. Another one is looking at it from the trunk perspective. Another is looking at it from the ear perspective. And we will all have different perspectives. So why would we not bring all of us together, bring all these different perspectives together, and then give out a solution that is holistic? That is the way I would want us to look at these things. And I'm happy, very, very happy. I have worked with her, not only at the institutions level, but also even in private, practice. And I can tell you that somebody like her on your team, you can be sure that things will move in the right direction. So in short, I must say that I'm very happy with this presentation. And for us as an institution, we have only 8% of our women, after graduation. Of course, it might be that some are, they've not yet come into corporate membership. But presently, we have only 8% of them. But then, as of 2019, about 18%, I don't know the current data, about 18% of women or of all students in the engineering college, there's a faculty of, College of Engineering, are female, we're females. I want to believe that now the numbers have gone up or the statistics have changed. So how do they fall out in the gap? Where are they? We need the support of all of us, because otherwise we will just be walking lame. And I'm not using lame, in a very negative manner. But then, of course, you want to be whole in one way or the other. You cannot have a vehicle that has a punctured tire, or you have a vehicle that runs on three tires. I'm not talking about tricycles. So we need to, ensure that this perspective is not put to. I have another call. So, but anyway, that's the point I want to raise, and I'll come back to it later. Thank you.
Thank you, President. There is two questions here I want to read so that Engineer Yah, you can answer. How easy or hard is the transition from abroad to Ghana in career field where there are barely or no opportunities? What are some of the routes that one can use to transit?
So, I think the opportunities are different for everyone. But again, for me, when I traveled, I always knew that I was someone who would want to move back to Ghana and make an impact. So in the back of my mind, I always wanted to move back home. And I don't know if it's, I want to see the question directly. Just one second.
Okay.
It says, okay, transition from abroad to Ghana in a career field where there's less or barely any. So I think before you even move from abroad, you need to make sure that you've come down a few times. You've identified the kind of opportunities that are available. If it aligns with your goals and it aligns with what you intend to do before you make a final move, it will be dangerous. It will be risky to just up and leave with the hope that you're just coming to find something. There are some people that kind of approach may work for, but it may not work for everyone. So whilst if the person is speaking from abroad, it's important that they come and spend some time in Ghana a few times. And it's not just coming on holiday. When you come on holiday, what you see is different from living in Ghana. So you need to come and spend an extended period of, say, 3 months in Ghana. Maybe go through a company without pay and see how their structure is, what they are doing before you make a decision as to your next move. You shouldn't just decide on the whim that, oh, I'm tired of America or I'm tired of England, so I'm moving to Ghana without any plan in place. That would be my my perspective.
Thank you. Engineer Komla Agbo, please go ahead with your question.
All right, thank you. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, engineer, for the insightful presentation. Please, I have this concern. I don't know how we can go about it, but in your presentation, you did mention that during the early part of your career, someone helped you, a young man helped you with to learn AutoCAD. But we have a situation where I'm yet to see such a situation in engineering fraternity anyway. But in other fields, you have a situation where the male counterpart will want to help the female counterpart. But it seems that I don't know whether our female counterpart feels that they are being pushed too much, or it's like, I mean, there's so much pressure on them. So I don't know. We try sometimes we try to help them out, but it's like you are pushing too much, or let me be. So in such a situation, how can we help? Because sometimes you may see that the female counterpart is really wasting time, but it's like they don't see it that way. So in such a situation, how do we help with that? So that's what I would like to ask. Thank you.
So I would want to believe it's not a female issue. It's more of a human issue. There are people who sometimes work in their own stride. So maybe it's the approach that is being taken to assist the women. And we need to first look at how we are approaching the assistance you're offering. In my case, I needed the assistance. I went to the people and requested for that assistance. In a case where you identify the potential in someone and willing to assist with the person, you need to be tactful in how you offer the assistance to the person. Because yes, you may see the potential, you may find that it's important for the person, but the approach is what will entice the person to determine if it's good for them or not. So not being forceful, but actually being an encourager and allowing them to see the end goal in what you're selling to them. I would once again believe it's not a female issue. I, in my firm, have had issues where I've seen young male engineers who just refuse to think outside the box. And I've had to sort of pinpoint ways and means for them to think outside the box. You know, there are so many ways to look at certain solutions without just being very rudimentary in how we look at it. So I kind of help them to broaden their scope of thinking and allow them to think better. And so I really truly believe that it's not just a female thing, it's really approach. It's how we allow people to feel what or to see what we see in them and nurture them in the right direction.
Thank you. I think there was another question here. Let me just read it for you. How can we promote equal opportunities for female engineers at management level? How can we promote for equal opportunities for female engineers at management level?
So I think it's a convoluted one because, like I said in my submissions, it's going to require a lot of individual and corporate mandates. There are things that need to be structured to ensure that we are encouraging it. And then there are things that we need to do to ensure that the development of the individuals are also being looked at. And so my entire presentation basically sums it up by saying that we need as a society to look at it from an institutional point of view, from a corporate point of view, and then from harnessing talent and promoting talent from an individual point of view as well. Sorry, can you hear me, Lewis? I think you're muted.
Okay, so there's a last question here. The question is so long, so I want you to read it. Then you can answer it. I am a young engineer.
Oh, okay. All right. So it says, Engineer Ya and Engineer President have spoken about my concerns and I'm grateful. I'm a young engineer and the only female engineer in my firm. I do have a knack for taking on assistant roles, of which I'm very good at. However, I still feel sidelined sometimes, and it's sometimes exhausting. Oh, sorry, someone has added a question, so it's moved up. Just 1 second. And it's sometimes exhausting. How do I thrive in an environment like that? So I don't know, there was a part of my presentation where I talked about ensuring there are tools in place to minimize the workload. When you say you take on assistant roles, is it that you are volunteering for any and everything? It has its downsides as well, because when people notice that you are trigger happy to do any and everything, they would load those things on you and you would burn out. You should have boundaries, and you should know when it's not possible for you to take on certain roles. And again, as a young engineer, I can identify when you are in a firm and sometimes saying no may seem very scary to you, but you need to figure it out with your leaders, those who are directly above your supervisors, and have a clear discussion on what you can and what you cannot do. Again, especially when you're saying that you feel sidelined, then it means that whatever you think you're even doing is not being acknowledged and identified. So have a conversation, an honest conversation with your superiors in a very tactful, in a very respectful manner, and see how best that you can work together to both achieve the goal of the company and your individual growth goals as well.
Okay, there's one question here as well. The name is T. So my question is, how can a female scale up in engineering against a male counterpart in cases where a male is preferred because it is thought that the job demands physical strength or having to work late or extended hours, etc., which may be too stressful for a lady?
Sorry.
That is the... Should I read it again?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
So here she's talking about, physical strength and, it's the same thing with the example I gave about business owners who would choose a male counterpart over a female counterpart because they realize, oh, you're having 3 children in the last 5 years. It's not helping with the cycle of the company. Now, I feel that in fields where there's demand for physical strength and late extended working hours, and you must, as an individual, as a female, determine if this is really your space or not. There are some women I know who are climbing pylons and doing all that work, but it's not for everyone. Now, if you realize that where you're headed as a person does not align with the goals of the company, you can't be requiring equity. You can't be requiring for recognition when you're not able to deliver what is expected of you in that role. However, you can have conversations to see how in that same role, are there aspects of it that you have strength in that they require? And so it can be tweaked to match your ability and you're still not expending yourself in ways that you are not able to. So I think sometimes we're afraid as young professionals growing to have honest conversations with our seniors. And it's a cultural thing. It really is a cultural thing. So I understand how this can be stressful, but it's something that needs to be taken up and spoken with your seniors about. However, you must understand that companies have goals, companies have structures that they need to meet. And as women, we need to identify where our strengths are and use it to our advantage.
Thank you, Engineer. I think we have just about 5 minutes to end the call today. We'll take the last question or last comment from anyone who wants to ask a question. Then we can wrap up for today. Last question or last comment. Please, if you want to say something, raise your hand. If not, then we can wrap up. Let me check if there's any hand up here. No? Okay. Anthony Kojo, please. Last question for the day. Go ahead. Anthony, please go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, my last contribution is I just want to thank you all, and I thank Engineer Ya especially for having all this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and coming back to Ghana to contribute his quota. And I want to say on behalf of GHA, my president, we appreciate and we thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Anthony. I can see the national executives. If some final comment from your end, then I'll hand over to Engineer Naki to give the vote of thanks and also give a final comment from the wine perspective. Any comment from the national executives? Anyone? Presido, are you still on the call? Final comment. I can see him on the call.
Sorry, I was struggling to unmute myself.
Sorry about that.
Yes, but I would like to thank Ya again, Engineer Ya. Well, I call it Ya, but Engineer Ya, for availing herself to be, even though she was going to be thanked. I very much like the interaction, in the sense that I have always said it. There are a lot of women who all they need is the support and to be told that they are good and they can make it. The other day I referred to some data. I love data. You know, where KNUST, when I think 2019, the group that is all engineering graduates at the time, I think about 1,800 of them were women, and they formed about 18%, which I earlier on gave. Now, at another time in 2021, they were in a class, I think the civil class, they were about 15%. And of those who had first class, 20% of them were females. Those who had second class upper and above, 92% of the females were in there. What is the point that I'm making? The point is that our females have that capacity. They have the look at the route that Engineer Ya Okudzeto has taken, mathematics, when a lot of people are struggling with mathematics. Sometimes there is doubt, but and even for us men, please, I'm just not trying to only do for men. For us, the young, males who also join us when they have not gained experience, we need to empower them. Some of us were empowered because sometimes if you look at your background, you will tell yourself that, no, it cannot be me. I cannot make it. I didn't go to that school. I don't belong to this group. No, you can, and you have the capacity. All you need to do is to, of course, after the empowerment, you also have to ensure that you know your stuff. When you know your stuff, it also emboldens and gives you that mental toughness. That look, if you challenge me, I have the technical information, I have the mental capacity to analyze, and then we can discuss things on the on that level. But we should not in any way try and push anybody down. And as I did say in my first presentation or comments, is that we have almost 51% of them, and their views would help you. And for us who are employers, sometimes they may come very timid. Please bring them in, let us train them. And I can tell you for a fact that when they are trained, they are going to be diligent and they are going to help your company grow. I have always boasted that in our office, we live as a family. Please let us do that. It does not matter whether the person is male or female. We should all be each other's keeper. And I know that, like I have said, Ubuntu, because you are, I am. Thank you.
Thank you, President. I want to give the platform for the wine president, Engineer Dr. Kwekwenah. Please, if you're on the call, we want to give you the floor to share something with us before we come with a vote of thanks. Engineer Dr. Akpekpena, please, are you on the call, the wine president? Please, if you're on the call, the floor is yours now. I saw her a while ago. Okay, whilst we wait, Engineer Naki, please, the floor is yours to share a word from the wine's perspective and then the vote of thanks.
Okay, so we've had the female representation in engineering leadership requires a multifaceted approach. Be able to address the systematic barriers and foster inclusive culture in our various organizations. And YA has given us strategies that we as women, the female engineers, as well as our employers, can implement so that we can have more representation and thrive in the industry so that we can live. And I must say that I'm happy that my firm was cited as an example, because I am part of the 50% that the engineer president was talking about. And we didn't even talk about our board. Our board also has a female representation. And I know, and as a group, as a company, we have a lot of female engineers in there doing wonderful jobs. So YA has really dealt with the situation on the ground. So YA, on behalf of Branch 4 of BHIE and on behalf of WINE, we want to say thank you for expressing our sentiments through your experience and giving us strategies to live with, to help us and then increase the number of female leaders in the industry. We want to say thank you for your time. We want to say thank you for the president and council members who joined. And we also want to say thank you to all the people on the call, all members on the call, both male and female. Thank you for your time, and you have helped to make this session a successful one. Thank you, and God bless us all.